Is he going to be there in 2, 3, 4 years? Probably unlikely, but I don't think at this moment in time they're going to wheel the act and make a knee-jerk reaction in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. That's my personal opinion.
The future of Erik Ten Hag is once more the hottest topic in English football, and we're only 3 weeks into the season. We're going to try and chat about the Liverpool defeat, the manager's future, and a public backing. That and more on the latest episode of the Theatre of Red. Well, hello there. I have managed to pull myself out of the bed and return following a week's sabbatical where I had the absolute cheek to allow sickness to take an episode off of the Theatre of Red. You're all, of course, very welcome. Thanks for tuning in today. And although we are still recovering from the most painful of weekends, we shall push forward together and we will get through this. I'm very pleased to welcome the latest Manchester United Academy graduate to the show, a man who spent 8 years plying his trade in the underage ranks before replacing Mr. Ruud van Nistelrooy in the Champions League, and then going on to make his Premier League debut only 3 days later, replacing Ryan Giggs, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Danny Pugh, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I got that right, didn't I? It was Ruud van Nistelrooy in the Champions League and Ryan Giggs in the Premier League.
No, I think it was John O'Shea in the Champions League.
You replaced John O'Shea?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, yeah.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Yeah, maybe double check that one, but yeah, I think it was.
Okay, I've got off to a great start here. Danny, you have a wealth of experience at a variety of top-tier football clubs, and you can appreciate the sentiment of football tribalism, belonging and rivalry between various sides in England. When you consider the nature of the defeat to Liverpool on Sunday last, one of a collection of unfortunate performances that we've had in recent years against them, having the experience that you have, how was the dressing room after that performance?
Yeah, I think it's a massive, massive game of football. I think it's not a derby as such. It's not the Manchester derby, but it's probably as big, if not bigger, game of football than a Manchester derby even, I'd say. The rivalry between the two clubs is massive. It has been for many, many years. And I think when you suffer a defeat like that, it really is an absolute sickener, and it's definitely hurt the supporters, and it'll definitely hurt the players and everyone involved within the football club.
We did see a relatively positive opening 25 minutes. Obviously, we had the VAR reprieve for Alexander-Arnold's goal during that. And then, like so many times before, and it's not just under Ten Hag, but multiple managers, you have a moment of madness, which leads to a goal, and then the backbone of the side is tested, and once more, they just seem to lack belief, they lack confidence, and they just fail to be able to respond to any form of an onslaught, regardless of the opposition. What was your view of the performance overall on Sunday?
Yeah, it's a disappointing performance for me overall over the full course of the game. I think there looks a bit of gulfing the two teams. Liverpool look far superior for me by the end of the game, and it's disappointing to see the United still seem a way off where they should be and where they need to be challenging for not necessarily the title, but for the top end of the table, really, for me. So yeah, I thought there was lots of it in the end, a little bit of golfing class. Like you said, once that first goal went in, there only looked like one winner.
Yeah, and with that, then individuals are obviously easily scapegoated. I think it comes hand in hand in football and with supporters and mainstream media who obviously want to rip and claw to get as many stories as they can out of Manchester United. And many players will obviously endure the wrath of social media thereafter. But with Casemiro on the day, he was particularly lacking. I mean, he was dispossessed 10 times in the opening 40 minutes. And then obviously he was arguably at fault for both goals, one with a poor, irrational pass and the other then being easily barged over. And the team then suffers as a result in transition. The big talking point surfaced when he was replaced at half-time by the young Toby Collier, who was inadvertently making his Premier League debut. Now, in terms of Casemiro as a player, when you consider that performance, What are your views on him now? Because we did see a guy at the start of the season. I mean, he looked like he was a lot trimmer than he was last campaign. He looked like he had the bit between his teeth, similar to when he arrived from Madrid. But unfortunately, we now have also seen the Jekyll and Hyde side against Liverpool, where he just looks to have completely capitulated after a promising opening 2 games of the season.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's quite difficult for me to sit here and kind of judge Casemiro with what he's achieved in the game and the quality of player he is. But I think he's obviously started the season well, but it's in these games against the top sides, against Liverpool, where maybe it's not going your way. Everything's not going to plan, and you look to these players, the players who've got the experience, the players who've got a little bit of a little bit older, maybe they've won things. He's been here, there, and everywhere, and he's won a lot. We can't fault that. But these are the games when you look for these kind of players to get you out of trouble or to settle the ship, to calm things down, to look after the young players around them. But it was him who, unfortunately, was making the mistakes. It's him who had the really disappointing game, and it's just really surprising. But like I said, the quality he has got, he does possess, and the career he's had. I think you do just expect more of that calibre of player in these type of games.
And then when you're seeing Toby Collier coming in to make his Premier League debut, how much of a statement is that from Erik ten Hag to introduce a youngster who's never experienced that Premier League environment to come in when the side is 2-0 down against Liverpool in that particular melting pot in Old Trafford? What sort of a statement is that?
Oh, it's a huge statement. It's probably not a game you'd usually bring a player into for the debut for that level of game. You're losing the game. You're under the caution to bring a young lad in for his debut. It's a massive statement to bring someone off like Casemiro, like you said. It's a huge statement to Casemiro, but also to the other players as well in the team.
It was a statement, and I think realistically, there is only so much you can expect from a youngster. He obviously looked nervous, and that's to be expected. No one is going to begrudge him of that. But that said, he did put in a notable performance. I mean, he won 100% of his duels. He provided a noticeable contribution on the ball. Now, on this podcast and off, I've spoken to many, many people about the prospect of Collier going on and having a very promising career in Manchester. And with respect to him, there's no disservice in any way, shape, or form with that showing. And I think furthermore, when you see these links of Casemiro with Turkey, I think it only further emphasizes the fact that Ten Hag has been looking at this guy as somebody that he can potentially rely on coming off the bench to shore up things with 10 to 15 minutes remaining, and also to provide support to the newly arrived Manuel Ugarte and also alongside Kobbie Mainoo. Do you view him having a noticeable part to play in the upcoming campaign?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the fans want to see the young players come on. They're going to support them. And they're not probably going to expect a young player like that to come in on the game and dominate the game. But they want them to compete. They want them to run a work round. They want them to do the basics well. And I think that's what he did. Like you said, it was a tough game to come into for your debut especially. But I don't think he's done himself any harm. He's put his name out there. And I don't think it'll be the last time we'll see him this season.
Agreed with that. I want to see him play more. And I mean, there's nothing better than the academy flourishing at the very highest level. But it's not necessarily just the youth players, because we have a number of debutants coming through. You're looking at the likes of Matthias de Ligt. I mean, he came with an awful lot of press baggage because people are trying to build a narrative that there's a reason Bayern Munich have let him go, focusing on everything from injuries and a lack of form and the fact that he hasn't pushed on from his time in Ajax. So much of this comes hand in hand with Manchester United, because really we're looking at a guy who is assured, he's composed, and I liken it to Raphael Varane and when his arrival in Manchester, and we had this Rolls Royce type of a defender. But following his debut at Old Trafford and trying to disregard the scoreline and solely sort of focus on the player, I do think he delivered a largely promising performance.
Yeah, again, he's a top quality player. He's been there and done that. But I think the problem at the moment is in the past, players have come in and just slotted seamlessly into a successful United side a lot of the time, a winning United team. But now these players are coming into a side, but maybe it's not as settled, it's not as assured. They're not as comfortable in games as possibly they have been in the past. And it's not an easy environment to come into. And it's going to take the new players a little bit of time to settle, a little bit of time to get to know the surroundings, know the other players. So, yeah, I don't think it's a quick fix. There's been a lot of changes off the field, on the field. And for these lads, I think it's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe up to 10 games to really start finding their feet, and we'll see what they really like in a Manchester United shirt.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I want to stick on the defence for a moment and look at those fullback issues. Obviously, we have a continuous problem with Luke Shaw, with Tyrell Malacia, both regularly sidelined. But we've now seen Mazraoui enter the fray. Obviously, Dalot is deputising on the left. Mazraoui slots in on the right with little to no preparation or integration, and he's taken to the role like a duck to water. It's been about as seamless a transition and one of the more impressive arrivals in the Northwest in recent years. Just how promising and I suppose just how impressed have you been with the Moroccans since he's arrived?
Yeah, no, again, he's looked another promising talent, and it's he's been probably a plus point so far. So no, very pleasing. There is a bit of strength in depth there. If obviously Luke Shaw's an issue, like you said, at fullback, just not as a player, but probably his injury record. But yeah, no, the lads who've come in have done well. So he's one that we can really keep an eye on going forward.
When things are not going to plan, when results don't go to plan, it's time to play the blame game, and it's time to find fault in anyone. We have Joshua Zirkzee. He's after coming from Serie A side Bologna to aid Rasmus Højlund and provide a sort of a differential in attack. Now, he has already come under scrutiny from everything from how tall and awkward he looks to being slow and cumbersome and struggling to integrate with his team. Everybody seems to have forgotten very quickly about his game-winning goal against Fulham 2 weeks ago. This is a guy who's arrived with a background of being able to link midfield and the wide players, while also providing a target or that hitman role in himself, and that he can ideally provide support for Rasmus Højlund in moving forward. I mean, surely we haven't seen enough of him to make any sort of a clear-cut conclusion, and he hardly deserves this sort of criticism that's being aimed at him.
Such early days in his career. At United, I think it's far too early to start judging people negatively more than anything, to be honest. No, so I think he's probably someone who wouldn't have been thrown in if all players fit, all being as it should be. Would he be thrown in at the deep end as much as he has done? Maybe not. He'd probably been eased in back in the day, back when, like I said, more centre forwards competing for places. I think they can kind of feel the way in at times, but a lot of these players are getting thrown in at the deep end. So I won't want to judge him now. I think the criticism on him probably is a little bit too harsh. This year, we're 3 games into the season, but I think the result, what happened at Brighton, the result there, it's just put huge amount of pressure going into the Liverpool game, and then obviously that's not gone to plan, and then obviously the guns are out. That's how it looks at the moment. But it is still very early in the season. The manager's been backed, he's been supported publicly. He's brought in quite a few new signings, so like I said, it's going to take a little bit of time for everyone to bed in, and I think maybe after 10 games you can start looking at these players and looking at the team, and hopefully there'll be more of an identity and more of an understanding of what's expected and what we're going to expect going forward.
One thing that we've become accustomed to is a reactionary football team in the Northwest ever since the departure of Sir Alex. It's one that has had to fight and claw for consistency regardless of the manager, and it does not seem to matter who's in the hot seat. What we've seen in recent years, it's this necessity for a reaction to a poor performance. And you've mentioned Brighton, and I thought that was a pretty disappointing result, because by and large, I spoke afterwards with multiple publications about how, despite the loss, there was something different on the day. I could see something more. There was a continuation of the sense of structure that we saw during pre-season. And even though we came away with nothing on the day, and look, I know football is a results business, but it just felt different than previous seasons. It felt like something had been built, and that we had a chance to harness that in going into the Liverpool game. a bit of hope, a bit of belief with continued structure that we can get something from this lot at home. But now we're looking at back-to-back defeats, entering an international break instead of a game that gives an opportunity to atone for the disappointment that everyone is feeling. I want to know, as a player, just how much of a kick in the teeth is it not to be able to get back in the field immediately to make up for that loss?
It's the last thing you want, if I'm being honest. You don't want that break. People say there's too many games, there's not enough time between the games, but when you've lost 2 back-to-back games, you want a game as soon as possible. Like you said, you want to recover, you want to put these things right. But as it stands, obviously all the players have gone here, there, and everywhere, and you're not able to regroup as a team and start looking at where you've gone wrong and what you can do to redeem the problems, really. So yeah, no, it's disappointing. You want to play a game as soon as possible. On a positive side, maybe it gives the lads the time to go away, clear their heads a bit, refresh, reset, and then come back in again, revitalise to attack the next part of the season after the international break. But yeah, for me as a player, and I know a lot of players are the same, after a defeat or a couple of defeats, you want to get straight back on the pitch and try and put things right.
Yeah, and I think it's felt across the supporter base too. You're just sitting and waiting for a bit of joy. It's so frustrating with these international breaks because the difference for United is just so notable. If United beat Liverpool, you're going in on the ultimate high. But because we have tasted defeat, you're now heading into the break with mainstream media and every naysayer writing every bit of downing material that they can possibly do to the club. And then with that, it leads us on to something you mentioned with Ten Hag, because his future has once again come under scrutiny, and there's this natural expectation for individuals to be calling for his head. Obviously, it has since come to light of the public backing that he received on Sunday before kickoff from Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth. Both of them have come out categorically and said that Ten Hag is the right man. We're happy he's here. He's the man to lead us forward, and we want to work with him, and we have enjoyed our time together to date. Considering everything and what we know with the comments that have come out afterwards, what is your view on the situation with the manager?
Yeah, I think at the end of last season, there was obviously his position wasn't certain. I think it's been made public news that I think a few managers were spoken to, so it was clearly up for discussion whether he was going to stay or whether he wasn't. The club have decided over the end of the season to back him. They've backed him financially, they've backed him obviously like with the year extension. So they have backed him, and I think they're going to have to stand by that. I think 3 games in to then go back on the word of what the step would look a little bit disastrous, really, if they backtracked on that now. So like I said, I still stand by. It's so early on in the season. It's too early to start judging individuals and teams at this moment in time. I think he's going to need, I'd say, 10 games. I think look at 10 games in the season. Look, has there been an improvement on performances? Has there been an improvement on results? Can you see the team? Can you see a progression? Can you see what they're trying to do on and off the ball, in and out of possession? These kind of things. And can you see this team moving forward? I think that's when 10 games in, you can start getting more of a picture of where the team's at, where the manager's at, if his ideas are working, if the players are taking his idea on board. So for me, it's far too early now to start talking about a sacking of the manager who was given the backing only like a couple of days ago, really. I think he's got to stick with him now and then see maybe 10 games in where we're at and which direction the club look like they're going in.
It's even before Liverpool, because Dan Ashworth spoke in July, and so many people seem to forget this. Because on one hand, they opted to extend his contract by a year, Ten Hag. Now, you can interpret that whatever way you want. You can say that they've taken the option for the further year instead of an extension, or you can say that they've done so as a show of public confidence. But regardless, people just seem to forget or ignore that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos are the definition of shrewd business operators. And if you go into a situation where you have opted to offer an additional year to Ten Hag, so many people just seem to have casually forgotten that if you go and sack him now, you have an additional year's severance compensation that will have to be paid. And in what world does that make any sort of logical financial sense when they're trying to comply with the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules? I mean, to give the man a new contract and sack him several weeks later, paying more compensation to do so, it just makes no sense. But then when you look at what Dan Ashworth said in July, he made a point saying that a lot of people in modern football get fixated on the fact that there's this focus on short term and that ultimately people get fixated on the results of a couple of games. When realistically, if you want to be successful, you have to look at it from a medium to a long term point of view. And that's what you're getting at. I mean, you're saying 10 games. You want to see if there's improvement, if there's a style of play tactically, and if we're seeing something positive and moving forward. Because the backroom team have made it clear they're not interested in winning one Premier League. They want to win the title and then they want to retain it while also challenging and winning in Europe. The idea of challenging on a perennial basis is the fundamental key here. So while I can totally appreciate frustration, Danny, and I understand that social media is going to be a cesspit for that on a daily basis. And when I say social media, I also want to extend that to YouTube and some of the would-be superstars that make their opinions known on a daily basis on that platform. It's all very damaging. It's all very unnecessary for the youth of the game because obviously the youth is impressionable and they take these people's words for fact. But when we're looking at an environment where there's a whole new rebuild going on, and Ten Hag has surely got anywhere up to Christmas and further to establish a point where he can integrate new signings, his academy players, while introducing players back from injury. However, you then flip it and you say that we've got Southampton coming up after the international break. And let's say, touch wood, we go out and we witness a poor performance and a negative result. Immediately, the Ten Hag conversation is going to resurface and it's going to focus on his lack of suitability for the role and the requirement to sack him. Now, you have been at the club, albeit during a time when perennial trophies were delivered, but we're at a different time and the conveyor of managers needs to be halted. Personally, I feel we need to focus on this plan and on this project. And surely, Danny, the words of Ineos are committed to maintaining that with Ten Hag.
Yeah, no, I think there's always going to, at the size of the football club that Manchester United is, the scrutiny, the spotlight is always been on the football club. At Manchester United, it seems bigger and a bigger spotlight than probably any of the football clubs in the world, really. So the pressure and the focus will always be on them. I stand by the fact that even if they have 2, 3, 4 bad games, they're going to stick with him. They're going to stick with him. And like you said, maybe it's going to be till Christmas. If things haven't turned around by then I think they're going to have to look at things. But there's been a huge rebuild behind the scenes. Like I said, since Ineos have come in, the new owner, the part owners come in, and there's been a huge rebuild of backroom staff. You can see virtually daily there's people moving out, people coming in. And I think, like you said, it is a long-term project. Is the manager, Erik ten Hag, is he the long-term manager of the football club? I don't know. At this moment in time, I'd probably say not. Is he going to be there in 2, 3, 4 years? It's probably unlikely, but I don't think at this moment in time they're going to wheel the act and make a knee-jerk reaction in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. That's my personal opinion.
I have been a vocal backer of Ten Hag since he came to the football club because working on a point of conveyor of managers where one comes in, brings in X amount of players and then leaves and another manager arrives to inherit them. I mean, it's about as counterproductive as you're going to get in the game. It's this rinse and repeat of a process that is just not working. You have to back a process. You have to trust the scenario. But that said, it's an absolute requirement that Manchester United return to Champions League football. And it is very hard to tell after 3 weeks where the team is going because so many people are using 3 games as a continuation of last season. But from your perspective, in what you see, do you think this squad with the signings and the academy players coming in, do they have the capability to bounce back from this early disappointment and ascend towards a top 4 position as they currently are?
I do think they have the capability to pro for the back 4. If I'm being perfectly honest, I still see them way off Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool. At this moment in time, I think the difference with the manager this time than what probably the past managers is the structure behind them now. I think the structure that's getting built at the club, when the managers leave in the future, I think there'll be less unrest, if that makes sense. There'll be more structure, there'll be more stability in the background, and there'll be more maybe club philosophy in the background, whereas in the past when obviously managers have left, like you said, they've taken players have gone, and whole new batch of players have come in. I feel what's going on now is the stability is getting, the building blocks getting put in the background in places. So when eventually Ten Hag goes, I think there'll be more stability behind, where there won't be such an upheaval when a new manager comes in. But yeah, I think the players they do have and the players they've brought in, and hopefully, like I said, the academy players, they are going to have enough to compete for that top four. I think they can, but I don't see just at this moment in time. I just think Liverpool, Arsenal, City at this moment in time are quite a way ahead of them.
It's painful to say it, but all you have to do is look at the figures. They're there in front of you, and even the gap that was there last season. But there is plenty of opportunity, because we know from a season perspective, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. There has to be a realistic set in moving forward. United were never going to go into this season and not lose football games. Look, that's just a fact. But there is ample avenue in moving forward to atone for this. And I'm sure that you can see far better than me. You've been there. The benefits of momentum, winning one football game, and the positive that brings into a dressing room, and just how you can build on that. Like, I saw it from an amateur level. I can only imagine how even more that's amplified when you're doing it on a professional basis, working on a day-to-day basis in a training field. With all of this, Danny, I want to deviate ever so slightly. And there's something I want to ask, because I was always very vocal in support of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he was at the club. I love the passion, what he meant to Manchester United and what he was trying to build. And I suppose what I really liked was the bond between the football team and the supporters. Realistically, it was probably as close a bond as the two sections have had since Sir Alex was there. But I'm bringing this up because one thing that has come back into the media spotlight since Sunday's defeat is Solskjaer's interview, where he highlighted how trophies can mask progress at a football club and hide a stagnant nature. Now, recently I asked Daniel Nardiello about this, and if he believed that the League Cup and the FA Cup wins are masking failures that are happening in the background at United, because that is what is being perceived in the public eye at the moment. That is what these naysayers are trying to put forward. So I want to know, do you believe that? Have these trophies masked any progress at the club under Ten Hag?
It's a great question. And it's one I don't know I've got a good answer for, to be honest. I think it was a huge surprise when they won the FA Cup last year. I think it was, and people didn't expect it, and it gave the whole place a huge uplift. It possibly did mask the season, turn out to make the season maybe better than it possibly was. So yeah, I think there is a little bit of truth spoken in that, if I'm being completely honest. But I will say it's not easy winning any trophy, whether it's the League Cup, whether it's the FA Cup, whether it's the Europa Cup. These are difficult things to do. So there's not taking anything away from that. But yeah, possibly it has maybe taken a little bit away from how maybe the shortcomings have been, maybe masked over slightly, should I say.
So bearing all of this in mind, I don't want it to seem that this is all down and doom and gloom, because ultimately we've endured enough of that throughout the week. I'm confident that the manager has the capabilities to turn this around. Personally, when you said a few moments ago, is he the manager to be there 3 to 4 years' time? I always draw back at the man that I saw at Ajax and what he was able to build when he had the correct structure behind him with Edwin van der Sar. I think, personally, that he has the capabilities and the foresight to build something that can move forward in a positive fashion. Now, maybe I'm being romantic, maybe I'm being deluded, or maybe I'm still sick after last week. I don't know. But in moving forward, outside of the obvious necessity to win football games, what more do we need to see on a weekly basis?
For me, you want a collectiveness from that, and you want to be able to see it with the players on the pitch and linking with the manager. And it sounds the real basics, that drive, determination, that winning every ball, winning every tackle. But then on the flip side, when they've got the ball, they look like they've got a structure. They know how they want to play, how they want to win games of football. But yeah, for me, it's outworking teams, outrunning teams, out-battling teams. That you want to get the basics out first, but then seeing the quality these footballers have got, because they have got some brilliant footballers. There is some talented young lads there. And I think the positive thoughts of the building blocks are getting put in place in the background. I think the stability is coming back. That's not been there for a while. There's talk, the new stadium's been talked about, the training ground's getting improved. They're bringing in the signing. So I think, like you said, there is huge positives. It's not been a great start to the season, results-wise. But you just want to see a buy-in. You want to see that connecting again, like back with the fans again, the atmosphere, the young lads coming on, like you said the other day. So yeah, it's the collective buy-in for me, from the players, the fans, and the manager, looking like there's a cohesion of them all wanting and pulling in the same direction, really.
I'm going to ask you one final question. It's about the premise of what you're speaking about regarding cohesion and putting in work and effort. And it's regarding Marcus Rashford. Now, just to clarify, I have no agenda here. I'm a supporter of Rashford. I value what he means to the football club and what the club ultimately means to him. But this is a guy that comes under so much spotlight for a perceived lack of care and a desire to be wearing that football shirt. There is this sense of purpose that when you see the image of a guy who doesn't look happy, but then realistically, people who know him off the field, they know that he's very introverted and that he wears his heart on his sleeve. In what you've seen from the forward, we'll say coming off a season with 30 goals and 10 assists, to then endure so many struggles last season, we now see a man who appears to be completely devoid of confidence. Where is the Marcus Rashford that we've seen putting his head down and beating his man multiple times? The guy that has given Trent Alexander-Arnold nightmares for turning him inside out. Go back to last Sunday, we saw multiple opportunities against Liverpool for him to take on Ibrahima Konate, and he opted against it every single time. Do you think we're looking at a guy who is being told to retract from his attacking duties and more so focus on the team? Or is it simply just a guy who is completely shot of confidence?
Again, it's a really tough one for someone who doesn't know the player personally. I know what a huge talent he is. I know, like yourself, what he can do on a football pitch. I think that's the frustrating thing with him at the moment. He just doesn't seem to be able to hit the heights that he has done in the past. And possibly it is a confidence thing, but it's such a difficult thing. If it is, how it needs somebody, that's the manager's job, the coach's job, to try and get him back to where he was a couple of seasons ago. But he's a huge concern, and you hope he's okay first and foremost, because he doesn't seem the person, he doesn't seem the player he was a couple of years ago. He's a local Manchester lad. He supports the club. I think he's come out and said nobody cares about the club as much as he does, and that's the sad thing. But he just doesn't seem to be able to hit the heights of where he was for one reason or the other. And I can't answer the question why that is, what he's doing wrong, because you know the talent's there, you know the ability's there. He was a huge threat. I'm hating to play against him myself, but there's something with him at the moment that he's not quite there. But I can't, without being inside that football club, I can't say what it is, but it is. It's massively frustrating for people. Obviously, supporters of the club, for the fans, for probably his teammates as well, and for himself even as well. He won't want to be performing how he's performing. He'll want to be getting back to scoring the goals, terrorising defenders. So all around it's a very, very difficult situation.
There's only one thing for it: a hat-trick against Southampton after the international break, and that'll quieten everybody. Danny, absolute pleasure speaking with you today, my man. What have you got coming up over the coming weeks? Anything interesting happening on your side?
I'm actually playing. Well, I'm involved in the game at the weekend at Old Trafford, which I'm looking forward to against Celtic. So that's the big one. Looking forward to. So yeah, that's the highlight of the next couple of weeks, really.
Much preparation gone in for the Legends game?
I like to keep myself ticking over. Yeah, keeping fit. A lot of training on my own, so I do still do a lot of football coaching at the moment, so I'm always got the ball and keep it ticking over, do my own training sessions and things. So yeah, I try and stay in shape, but I wouldn't say I'm exactly match fit, let's put it that way.
It's always going to be nice to get back out onto that pitch and to run out there, especially against Celtic. It's going to be a magical day. Obviously, this is something we've been promoting massively within the Theatre of Red. And we had Danny Simpson, as I said, on the last day, and Danny's going to be there with you too. It's going to be a fantastic spectacle. I've been trying to promote as much as I can and tell everyone who's listening that they have to go and get their bums in the seats and they got to get in there and watch you all playing. But if anybody wants to get in touch with you, Danny, have a chat about it or a chat about anything else, what's the best way to do so?
To be honest, I'm not great on social media, to be honest, so it's, I hope they'll just see you down at the game.
Okay, nice and simple. But if you want to get in touch with me, you can do so on Twitter at Shaun Connolly 85. If you'd like to get in touch with the Theatre of Red, we're available on every single social platform at theatre_of_red. But the most important thing, if you are listening now and you have got this far, just scroll down and you might subscribe. And if you fancy leaving a review, you can do so as well, because every single one of them mean the world. Enjoy a week of international football if you can, and we'll catch you all next week. Thanks a lot, Danny.